What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be installing the new Sinister Diesel cold air intake on my 2023 F350 Diesel. Now there are a handful of different intake options out there, but I didn't want an intake that was primarily made of plastic. I wanted something that was more of a billet aluminum because I like how aluminum can handle the heat dissipation, because obviously when you're forcing air through the intake, it will heat up, but because of the aluminum, it will cool it down a lot faster. So I really wanted to go with something that was aluminum. And when you're looking at aluminum intake options, there's not that many to choose from, but I ultimately went with Sinister Diesel because I've used their products in the past and I plan on using more of their products here in the near future. I really like their quality and I feel they're a pretty good company. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's open up the box. Okay, so here is the box right here with the new intake. Again, I just opened it up, take some of the packaging out. This is the intake tube right here. As you can see, it's branded with the Sinister Diesel. It does come in their iconic blue powder coating, which looks really nice. It does have the inlet here so you can put your sensors in so that you're not throwing any codes. I have the filter right here, which is pretty big, to be honest with you. I mean, I got pretty big hands and this is a pretty big filter, so I think it's gonna look pretty awesome. But it comes with everything you need there. And let's see what's down in here. So it looks like we have our install guide here, some warranty information, some stickers. And here's our cup link here for attaching the intake tube. And then down here, it looks like we have our mounting bracket here that mounts it to the truck. And then it looks like we also have some more tightening rings here as well. So that seems to be everything there. So that's pretty much everything that's gonna come with the kit. Now, over here is the factory intake that we're going to be taking out. So this really shouldn't be that hard. I mean, we probably just have to kind of move these hoses right here off of these clips, just giving us a little room to access this area here. And then it looks like there is a bolt right here we have to loosen up. And then we're gonna have to unplug our sensor here. And then we're gonna have to take out this plug here, remove this boot. And then we're gonna have to take a few more bolts off to remove this piece. So primarily this whole piece right here is the factory intake that we're gonna be getting rid of. So let me go ahead and grab a couple tools and we're gonna start working on taking that out. So I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so we're just gonna take a little pry tool like this and pull up this little push pin here. Okay, all right, pull that out. And then this boot right here should just pop right off. Okay, so the next thing I wanna do before I start unplugging anything is I want to disconnect both of my batteries, because I don't want to have any power going to the computer system that's going to be registering this sensor, because anytime you unplug any sensors while the batteries are hooked up, it could throw codes to the ECM of your truck. So just disconnect your batteries first. So let me go ahead and start disconnecting batteries and we'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and I just disconnected the positive of both batteries. I put a towel over the terminal so that no accidental connections could have happened and caused a spark. And I did that on the other side over there as well. So the next thing I want to do is just disconnect a couple of these little hoses here, giving us a little bit of flexibility to move these hoses out of the way. So let me just get this last one over here. There we go. Okay, there. Now we have a little bit of room to move these hoses out of the way. Then what I'm gonna do is right here, I'm gonna go ahead and there should be a push clip in the back. You're gonna pull it up. There we go. And we're just gonna unplug the sensor. And then we're just gonna come up here with a screwdriver and loosen up that bolt that's holding the intake boot up top. Okay, just loosening it up a little bit more. Okay, so we disconnected that up top. Now, I'm gonna disconnect these clips. Okay, over here. So there's two across the top, one on the side. I don't know if there's any more. I don't think so, but take this out. Okay, so now, once you take those clips off the top, there's two up here, one on the side. This whole top unit here can now be removed from the truck. Now, let's take out the filter. Okay, look how dirty that is. Man, this truck is not even that old. And look how bad that is. Wow. Okay. So that's what that looks like down inside there. So let me move the filter off to the side. Okay, so once you got the air box out off the back, like we just did, you're gonna wanna take an extension ratchet like this. I was just using a 932 socket, and you're gonna need to get down there and take that bolt out right there. Now the bolt fell over right there, but I'll get that out in a second. But you need to take that bolt out right there. Then we should be able to just kind of wiggle this out of place. Okay. Oh, there we go. Okay, so we got it loosened up. So on the side here, once we take this out, I'll show you. There's two metal brackets here that these rubber grommets here are seated in nice and tight. So you have to basically pull it up to get those rubber grommets to get out of those brackets. And then on the bottom, this plug right here is seated nice and tight into this rubber grommet there. So you really have to use a little elbow grease and really kind of rock this thing out of the way, and then it will pop right out. So now we got that out. We're gonna set this over to the side as well. So now we pretty much have the entire intake out. So now what we have to do is go start putting everything together on the new intake. But before I do that, I wanna come over here and take out my sensor from the existing intake. So let me just go ahead and get a little star bit there, okay? Take those two bolts out, and then we'll start installing this into the new intake. So I'll be right back in a second. Okay, so I just used, I believe, a T20. Can't get this to focus, but I just have a little T20 star bit here that I was able to take these two bolts out, and then we were able to remove the sensor from the existing intake. So now all I have to do is get this installed into the new intake, start putting everything back together, and we'll get the new one installed. So I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so we're back. So now what we gotta do is start putting a few parts together, which are pretty simple. So we could start off with our sensor that we took out of the existing intake, and we're gonna slide it down into this groove right here. Now, as you can see, there's a arrow here that's facing to the right. And if you look here, there's an arrow here facing to the right. Just so you know the orientation of how to put your sensor in. You want the arrows going to the right. So we're gonna slide that in like this. Okay, and then it does come with new bolts, but these bolts here are just gonna be more of a basic Allen wrench head there. So we're gonna go ahead, slide those in. So I'm just gonna go ahead and make it just a tad tighter, but not too tight, because again, you don't want to break the plastic sensors. So you just wanna make it nice and snug. So our sensor is now installed, just like that. The next thing we wanna do, we're gonna take one of these brackets and kind of bend it a little bit into like an oval position like this and slide it over this boot. Now this boot has a round circular end and then a oval end. The oval end is what it's attaching to the truck. The round end is gonna attach to this end of the actual intake. So what I'm gonna do first is take the oval end and stick it up onto the truck and mount that on nice and tight first. Then we'll go ahead and start doing the rest of the intakes. So let me go hop up in the truck. We're gonna slide the boot on, tighten it down, and then we'll get the rest going. So I'll be right back in a minute. Okay, so the next thing we wanna do, now that we have our sensor on and we have our rubber boot installed up here and we have it bolted down nice and tight, so that's on there. Then what we could do is take our bracket here, and this bracket is going to plug in to the bottom grommet right here. And it's just basically a circular ball that's gonna push down into this grommet. Now you have to probably put a little bit of pressure on it. Okay. There you go. So it's on there. Now we're gonna have to adjust the position of where it is because you can move it around. So we're just gonna leave it in there for now until we get the rest of the intake put together and sitting up here, because then there's gonna be a bolt that goes up under this bracket right here that's going to bolt in right there to that spot underneath your intake using the supplied bolt. So that's pretty much it. So the next thing I'm gonna do is get my filter with my bracket, stick it on the end of the intake, tighten it down, not all the way though, because we might have to do a little bit of rotating to get the nameplate lined up. But I'm gonna stick this on, tighten it down a little bit to where I could do a little bit of sliding it around. Then we're gonna go ahead and stick the intake in, mount this end up here to the boot that's already attached up in the engine bay. And then we're gonna adjust things into position, tighten our brackets down, and then we should be good to go. So let me go ahead and start working on that, and I'll be right back. Okay, so we got everything hooked up. So we have the intake attached over here at the boot with the boot bracket here. Everything's tightened down nice and tight, so we're all good to go with that. As you can see, the bracket down here below, it just plugs into there, and then I have it bolted up underneath the bottom of the intake over there. And then we just went ahead and put our filter on, slid it on, adjusted it into position, and then we went ahead and tightened that down. So that's how that's gonna look, just like that. So again, everything's all hooked up, nice and neat, everything's good. The only problem I see right now is my wire harness here. Okay, it's plugged in right down there to the main harness over there. There's not a whole lot of slack for the intake sensor to reach. I mean, there is literally just enough. I mean, it is tight. It does fit, but what I'll probably end up doing is cutting this wire. It's 3 little wires, as you can see right here. Probably very thin gauge wire. There's just 3 of them. I'll probably end up cutting it back about here and putting about a 3-inch extension wire on there to make sure there's a little bit more slack in this wire, because right now it's pretty tight. But again, it's not that big of a deal. Again, these intakes sometimes are just universal that should fit multiple years of your F350 diesel. And sometimes, depending on the year of your truck, they might do slightly different things to the wiring harnesses, or they might have a part that's sort of out of the way compared to other years. And that can make install sometimes a little bit difficult. But so far, everything actually hooked up pretty good. Everything fits. The only thing I'm not real fond of is the wire harness. And being that the wire harness to your intake sensor is attached to other harnesses and attached down below to a larger harness, I tried to untape a little bit. There's just not a lot of slack in that wire. So just be aware that when you're installing this in your truck, that the wire harness may or may not need to be extended. If it does, it's very simple. Just a very thin gauge wire, probably 3 to 4 inches. Splice them in and give yourself a little bit more slack. What I might try to do is get some type of foam gasket around this pipe here, just because if this wiggles, it could be rattling off of this metal pipe here, like that. I'll just get a piece of wire loom or some type of rubber gasket to slide over here like a sleeve, and that'll stop that. So now let me go back in and hook up my battery terminals, and let's go ahead and start the truck, and let's just check to make sure that no sensor codes are popping up and that everything works. So let me go ahead and hook these battery terminals up, and we'll be right back. Okay, so let's take a minute to listen to the sound of the factory intake first. So we went ahead and we revved it up a couple times just to give you a better understanding of the sound of the factory intake system. Okay, so I just went ahead and started up the truck. As you can see here on the dash, there are no codes that are being thrown because of the new sensor location on the brand new intake. So that's always a good sign there. Let's go up and take a look at the front. That's what it looks like there. You can actually hear the air being sucked in now. So let's go ahead and set up the camera and rev up the engine a little bit so you can hear the sound of the new Sinister diesel intake. Okay, so as I just demonstrated, you could definitely hear a large difference in the air volume being sucked in through this Sinister diesel open filter cold air intake. Now this is a 4-inch wide diameter aluminum tube, so you're gonna get maximum flow of air without any restrictions as commonly found in a large enclosed air box. Now, as I mentioned before, I did go ahead and add some plastic wire loom on this pipe here. So in case there is any vibration of the pipe, it's hitting up against this plastic sleeve here and it won't make any kind of rattling sound. I did go ahead and add in about a 5-inch wire extension to my extension wire here. I got everything soldered, wrapped, shrink wrapped, and then I actually added some wire loom on that as well. And then I just pretty much took a zip tie and zip tied it to this bracket here so that nothing's going to move around and tug on any of those wires. So now we have everything installed. Everything turned out great. I'm really happy with it. The installation was pretty simple and easy. The only issue I found was that my wire harness for my sensor was a little short. It still fit, but it was really tight. So I went in and added roughly 5 inches of extension wires to all 3 of the wires that are part of the sensor. Got everything soldered, got everything taped up, got everything wire loomed. Everything works and everything looks good. So I'm really happy with how this turned out. It sounds awesome in my opinion because I like hearing the sound of the air vacuum coming up through the intake. I like hearing a little bit more of that whistle of the turbo sound because everything's open now. I like that. And at the end of the day, I am increasing the air volume into my engine, giving me a little bit more performance. Now, is this performance going to be noticeable on a day-to-day drive? Probably not so much, maybe a little bit on your throttle, but not a huge difference. But you are increasing your airflow, which is going to give you a little better performance at the end of the day. But again, I really do like the Sinister Diesel all aluminum cold air intake. It matches my fuel filter conversion kit over there. I do plan on adding a lot more of the blue Sinister Diesel parts in my engine bay here, so stay tuned for those videos in the future. But at the end of the day, my overall impression of the Sinister Diesel cold air intake for my 2023 F350, I definitely give it a thumbs up and give it a go. And I'm really happy with how everything turned out. Okay, everybody, so we are all done. We went ahead and we installed the new Sinister Diesel 4-inch aluminum cold air intake system on my 2023 F350. Overall, the installation process was fairly simple. The only issue I see on my truck, now your truck might be slightly different, but on my truck, the wiring harness for the intake sensor was not quite long enough to my liking. But overall, other than that, everything went great and I'm really happy with it. It looks awesome, it sounds awesome. I'm increasing my airflow into my engine, giving me a little bit more overall performance. And at the end of the day, that's a good thing. So if you happen to be looking for a high performance aftermarket intake for your truck and you don't want a plastic one, you're looking for something with a little bit better build quality that's made of aluminum, I highly recommend checking out the Sinister Diesel cold air intake. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button and like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comment section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate all of your support. And as always, see you in the next video.